everybody, and welcome to another expert exchange. My name is Morgan Taylor. I am the editor of Abode magazine here at HAA, and I'm your moderator with our host, Betsy Marshall with Allied Orion Group. Today is Wednesday, November 11th, and today's topic is on powering conversions in a virtual reality, in this virtual social distancing world that we now live in. And I'm super excited about this session today, but before I turn it over to our host, I'm going to review some housekeeping items. Thank you all for joining us today on the second Wednesday of the month. In observance of Thanksgiving, we are going to skip the session that would be on November 25th, and our next session will be on December 9th. For our viewers today, please ask any questions that you may have in the Zoom chat box or in the comments via Facebook Live. Once we get through the questions that we curated, we will get to your questions. This is a micro webinar. We have a lot to get through today, but we're going to try to keep this session to our 30-minute time window. A quick disclaimer, we are not public health attorneys nor experts. This webinar is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute legal or professional advice. No member should act on the basis of any material contained in the webinar without obtaining proper legal or other professional advice specific to their situation. Please consult with your management company or property owner to address specific issues and to form your own company guidelines. With that, I'll turn it over to our host, Betsy Marshall.
Hello, thank you, Morgan. My name is Betsy Marshall, and I am with Allied Orion Group, and I'm happy to be your host today to talk about powering conversions in a virtual reality. We're talking with our expert today, Amy Lloyd. Amy is a marketing and training manager for Yardi. She is an industry specialist with over 15 years of experience. At Yardi, Amy oversees key project initiatives across the U.S. with a focus on the central region. Her career extends across multiple teams, having achieved key milestones within the RENTCafe Training, client services, programming, and regional marketing teams. Within her current role, Amy's marketing portfolio spans the commercial and multifamily real estate management verticals. Her passion and focus have always been building client relationships, enhancing educational resources, and bringing in practical business functionality to clients and industry professionals, which is what we're going to talk about today. So hello, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Betsy. Thank you so much for that introduction. That was great. And Morgan as well. I appreciate you guys. So I'm so honored to be here today with HAA.
So just to kind of jump into what we're going to talk about, the way we get leads and leases has changed completely. So in this session, we're going to discuss new and existing tools that will help us power conversions today and how we can best leverage them to capitalize on today's market shift. So the first question is, because of the pandemic, naturally leasing has evolved quite substantially. So how and when should we use virtual leasing?
Yeah, Betsy, that's a great question. And it's so funny that we're talking about this, or that I'm talking about this on the call with HAA today, because I was inspired to start talking about virtual leasing and doing more education on virtual leasing because of a gab and grub session that I sat in on with HAA just a few months ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like you said, it was really interesting to me to just hear different managers' perspectives of what they're going through since the pandemic. And it's so different from what I experienced working on site at the very beginning, 15 years ago, behind a big box computer. And I was sending faxes to verify individuals' background checks, right? And that might take 3 days to get back to see if somebody was actually qualified. And we've just come a really long way since then. And I realized that there are a lot of things that we weren't necessarily prepared for, we meaning the properties, that they just haven't experienced before. I think that the market has been shifting for the last several years towards virtual leasing, and pre-pandemic, we were seeing a lot of more customers and consumers getting comfortable completing transactions virtually. However, when you're used to shaking hands and being in person for transactions for a lifetime, it's hard to get comfortable with the concept of going 100% virtual. And I kind of see the pandemic as being a sort of metaphorical wake on a teeter-totter that really launched, I guess, this market into weighing whether or not going 100% virtual was worth it, because more than ever, we have encouragement to stay virtual and not be face-to-face. And so to answer your question, you asked when would be a good time to start thinking about virtual leasing if you're not already. And I would really encourage any of our listeners that are not to start thinking about it now, to start thinking about the tools that are available. And just real quick too, I wanted to clarify, a lot of times when I hear individuals talk about virtual leasing, they think about it in terms of starting at the application. And I want to encourage our listeners to think about virtual leasing actually starting from your web presence. Your web presence is kind of like your virtual front door. So if you, to be able to capture that market that's not leaving their house right now because of their pandemic, your website is their virtual front door, and they're looking at that website for guidance on what the next step is, and then moving into that online application, online payments, background screening, and then online signatures, so like lease documents or resident documents. Those are the primary tools that I consider being a part or a key part of the virtual leasing experience.
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love how you put that as your virtual front door. I mean, it's a really interesting way to look at that, which kind of leads me to, how can we, so if we know and we understand that they're going to our website first, how can we increase not only the quantity, but the quality of that website traffic?
Yeah, that's such an important question for us to be thinking about right now. And I've got a couple of different tools that I'll talk about to really help for us to think about when increasing that quality and quantity. So search engine optimization is a great way to increase long-term quality, I would say. It really builds your website's online presence, and it's going to help provide that stability that your website needs to capture quality leads. And I have an example. I was reading the multifamily housing executive article recently, and it was saying that internet is the first, second, and third thing that a student in the student housing market is searching for when they're looking for an apartment. So an SEO tip, if you're managing your search engine optimization in-house and maybe you don't have a company that's managing it for you, is to be thinking about those keywords. And I thought to myself, with everybody going virtual, more students spending time outside, they're probably searching for things like, is there internet in the pet park? Because they're spending time out there with their dogs while they're trying to work. And I thought to myself, I wonder how many properties are adding in their description that their pet park is accessible with internet access, if it is, or these other amenities that have Wi-Fi available. And so things like that, where we're just kind of shifting the terminology and making sure that your search engine optimization is using the right keywords. And then pay-per-click will drive more immediate traffic to your site and if you team that up with targeting quality leads and the quantity of leads, you're going to get that perfect combination for stability and filling that exposure on site. And one thing though I will mention about pay-per-click is that's a little scary when you're managing it in-house. Just like a couple of tips if you're thinking about managing pay-per-click in-house, is to really think about your budget spend in terms of what is your current vacancy, what is your vacancy loss, and exposure, and then trends, right? So your ultimate goal is to decrease that vacancy loss. And so think about your budget in terms of filling that gap. Like you want to get more leads, and you want to get quality leads to fill those vacancies. And so what should your spend be each month is going to differentiate a little bit month over month based on what your exposure looks like. And you should be thinking about that and a little bit flexible and watching that when building your budget. And then just noting that Google really rewards and other search engines reward pay-per-click ads and different ads that are using very intelligent, targeted keywords. So I would just encourage you again to know who your renter is. And it's as easy as just going onto Google, like I did it this morning, and I just put in top search queries for apartments in Houston. And if you actually scroll down to the bottom of your Google search, it has like 10 different recommendations of the top searches that are being asked about in Houston when looking for an apartment community. And you can get even more granular with what our individual is looking for. It might be amenities, or if you know what those keywords are and what it is that your renter is attracted to on your site, make sure that those are getting built into your website, to your SEO, and in your PPC campaigns. It's going to save you money and just make it all overall more impactful.
Okay. So what about the online reviews? They can either hurt or help a property. So can you talk about reputation management and what software is available for properties that are managing their reputation management in-house?
Yeah, absolutely. So the NMHC survey for 2020 actually said that 72% of your renters are referring to ratings and reviews for your property as a part of their decision-making process.
That's
right?
A huge chunk. Wow, 72%.
Isn't it?
Okay.
It's crazy to me. I mean, when you think about it, I guess it's not that weird because I don't go to restaurants or, somewhere new or make a big decision without.
Yeah, I mean, everything from Amazon to, reviews are really everywhere now. So it does make a lot of sense.
Yeah. So it's important. It's very important. And it's important to capture those reviews, but also make sure that you're monitoring those reviews and you're crafting the right responses. So a couple tips I would just suggest is making sure that if you're doing this in-house and your site staff is participating, that you have some sort of like company or property guideline in place to set the tone and the messaging when responding to these reviews, and even a timeline. And which kind of leads me into the software piece. Like the software piece can be such a powerful tool, and there's so many out there. So instead of recommending one over the other, I'll tell you about a few key tools to just kind of look for when you're using a reputation management software solution. So for my number one, any software solution is if you can have it integrated in with the rest of your software solutions, then that's always very helpful for your agent because they're not having to log on to as many locations. But if that's not an option, some of the other great assets, I would say, with a reputation management platform are to make sure that you have a user-friendly dashboard. So when you first log on, the thing I want to see is, do I have a new post on any of my reputation management platforms like Twitter or Facebook or apartment ratings? I should be able to see immediately that there is an action for me to go in and respond, because our writers are looking for that response. The readers are looking for that response even more when making that decision. And then having a tool where you can actually respond through the reputation management platform is very helpful. And being able to see competitor analysis, this is really cool. So this was a cool learning opportunity for me. There's this thing called sentiment analysis, where you can actually get reports that show you what are common ratings and reviews that are being said about your community or other competitor communities. So like, are they talking about how great your maintenance is, or how maybe it needs a little bit of work? And those are called sentiment analysis, and they have different reports available. So you can really make sure that you're adjusting your approach on site to do a little better in the areas or to market those things, which leads me to my last tip. Having the ability to market your reviews on your website through the software, where they might integrate or you can push it out to your website, is actually going to boost your SEO. So it ties in. The reputation management piece does, where if I'm searching for apartments in Houston that have great maintenance staff and you have a review on your site that talks about how great the maintenance staff is, you're actually more likely to pop up first before another apartment community. And I thought that was kind of neat. So those are a few tips for reputation management software solutions.
Okay, those are great. I made some of my own notes. Can't wait. So, but speaking of the website, so online scheduling seems to be a very important option now, and customers almost expect it, I would say. And NMHC says that 80% of our website visitors will use online self-scheduled tours. So how can our staffs manage this boost in lead conversions and appointments that are coming online?
Yeah, so I would say that when managing our reviews that are coming through online and all of the little things that we've talked about, the applications and the whole virtual experience, that a CRM platform is going to be a very powerful tool and solution for your on-site staff, because it's a lot coming throughout the day, and having it all available on a dashboard is very helpful. So a CRM software solution can do things like notify you when the application comes in, or prompt you to follow up when a day before move in, and just making sure that that whole customer relationship management experience is very easy for your agent, and then also for your customer, prospect, or resident. They should be able to get those immediate responses back. But it's hard to do when you're juggling several different software solutions. And so CRM system can really help streamline the operational side of managing the reviews plus online virtual leasing experience.
Kind of brings it all together.
Did that answer your question, Betsy?
Yeah. And we were talking to you about that it would help with the scheduling of the appointments and so forth. The CRM tool would do that also, like scheduling appointments and getting people to come in and kind of help facilitating that and completing that process.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And for schedule a tour. Yes. With schedule a tour, this is such a new thing in our industry, where we talked about the virtual front door. A lot of our renters today are looking to actually have a whole virtual experience, even going in and touring on their own. And I was thinking when I first heard about this that a lot more clients would push back, or consumers would push back, because it feels weird taking your hands off and letting them go look at an apartment on their own. Mm-hmm. But one of our clients actually mentioned that they had somewhere around 60 tours within the first 6 weeks that were virtual. And they found that they were getting higher conversions, more quality leads as a result of having schedule a tour available from their website, and that the renter was actually, or the prospect was actually spending more time in the unit itself, because they didn't feel rushed, I guess, by a leasing agent, but it was more time that they were spending making their decision than they may have if an agent was involved. So it's just a great option available to kind of back away from the in-person and just to provide your renter with more options.
Yeah, which is interesting, because it's not what we're used to. It's not what we're used to.
It's not.
It's the new to try for sure in this new day and age with that way the customers are reacting. So that's great. Morgan, I wanted to touch base with you and see if we had any questions.
Not yet, Betsy, we don't.
Okay.
But, our viewers, if you do have any questions that you would like to ask our expert, Amy, please ask them now. We have about 10 minutes left of our session today. But until then, let's get back to some of those other questions that we haven't gotten to quite yet.
Okay, super. So speaking of the distance thing kind of being new for us, we on site are very used to controlling and guiding and being right there with them and making sure that they see what we want them to see and maybe don't see what we don't want them to see. But now there's this whole distance approach. So with that, what's the best tool to maybe help the on-site teams distance themselves from prospective residents during the tour, whether it's an in-person or virtual, or what are some things that can be done to help with that distance, but still make it effective, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So we're seeing more and more properties. We talked about the CRM platform, but we're also seeing more and more properties adopt the concept of a kiosk. And so a kiosk can be utilized in a couple of different ways. Your prospect walks in the front door and they can actually go in and start viewing unit amenities and information about your community from the kiosk if your agent is assisting another prospect. And then also what's great about the kiosk is the prospect can have it in their possession during the tour, and they can do things like scan their ID. So ID verification is a great way to prevent that, you know, touching hand in hand transaction from happening, from the spreading of germs, and to keep safe distances. So they can actually, you know, scan from a camera their ID and verify it. And I don't know if any of your agents out there have ever forgotten to hand an ID back, but it's also very helpful in that way, right? Because then they can just stick it back in their pocket and it can verify it. But then that they can take that through the tour, take notes about their tour and highlight different amenities that they're interested in. And then they can even fill out their application right there without having, again, to like pass the paper back and forth or to turn your computer around at your desk. And it gives them a little bit more space. They can set them down on the couch and let them do that in a little bit more of a comfortable situation. And then the CRM app is another, if you have an app that integrates with your CRM online program, is great if you've got like a manager, for example, in that HAA call I mentioned, the Gab and Grub, got it right that time. There was a manager who had COVID that had to stay home, and it's so unfortunate because you don't expect that, right? But with a CRM app, you know, from their phone, they can take those calls that are coming into the property without actually having to use their cell service. And they can make appointments or respond to emails or text messages, right, directly there from the CRM app. So that can be a very handy tool available, software solution available for the virtual leasing experience for your agents as well. Okay.
And, you know, we've talked about a lot of different new things that are out there and, you know, things that we're doing differently. And a lot of this, you know, at the beginning we talked about was brought on from because of the pandemic. How much of this do you see continuing even beyond once we're in a safer space, if you will? Like, what do you think? What do you think? How long do you think these new things will last, if you will?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that just like with any trend, once you get really comfortable in these new shoes, it's hard to want to transition out of it. Just like it took us some time to get accustomed to virtual leasing initially. I think now that our consumers, our customers, and our clients are getting more comfortable with the online leasing experience, that it's not going to go away, that this is going to be the new normal for the foreseeable future. And it's all about just like getting on board and finding what the right integrated solution is to meet your property business needs and your customer or your prospect.
Okay. No, I agree. I think it's a really interesting transition that we're all having to learn. And I don't think it's going to go away. So the quicker I think we can really adapt to it, the better. So there's been some amazing tools that you've talked about and tips that we're going to really look into. I do have one last question. Should properties offer self-guided tours? And how can a property best utilize that as an option from being self-guided?
Yes. And so I mentioned with the self-guided tours, the numbers are just boosting with how many clients are adopting it and how many prospects are out there looking for self-guided tours to prevent from having to have that human interaction. And IoT can play into that. Self-guided tours are really cool. Like you can get in with a key code, you can walk into the unit, you can have Alexa greet you and talk to you about amenities, and you can ask questions and have actual keyword responses. So what are your pet policies? That sort of information. I'm all about the more accurate information you can get in the prospect's hands, either on your website through text or through IoT with a chat bot on your website where they can actually ask the question in their smartphone and get a response right back. Those types of tools are very powerful and are the types of things that will really set your community apart maybe from your competitor down the street. And so I think it's a great time to be thinking about it.
Yeah, that reminds me of the statistic you said earlier about how the conversion for those that were doing the self-guided tours, the conversion was so much higher than what they expected and everything like that. So that just that echoes what you're saying here. So that's great. Okay, awesome. Well, I just wanted to touch base with Morgan again before we wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Betsy. This has been very helpful, Amy. Really quick, I'd love to hear what you have to say, Amy, about, again, no questions from our viewers, but I'm curious about texting. Is it true that our renters today are leaning more towards texting?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I'll actually ask the audience here, how many of you guys prefer to get a text message instead of maybe a phone call these days? And I know some of us are old school and we like that phone call, but I would say like the majority of us, we like to get that immediate response back, or at least get the question out there so we know we've asked it, and then we kind of expect the response back within a timely manner. And our customers are the same thing. They're looking for their favorite store. Like for me, Target, I want to know if they've got a BOGO sale on shoes this week. And I'd rather them text that to me because I want to be the first one there to get the best, product available. And so your renter is expecting the same thing from their leasing and buying experience, and having an SMS system where your agent can respond right away is going to be a really powerful way to help convert those online prospects into actual applicants, into renters, all virtually, right? And so very powerful tool, SMS. And I think we're going to see more and more of our prospects really expecting to see that tool in their communication options.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Amy. I definitely agree. I love when my favorite store texts me about their deals. I'm like, thank you.
Yes. Oh, Morgan, I'm sorry. I did want to mention that I was actually surprised to see that 72% of renters in the NMHC survey said that they prefer texting and when communicating with your community. It was an interesting stat.
That is interesting. And a viewer, Olya, she actually says that she prefers text alerts instead of phone calls, because you're not sure what those phone calls are about with all these.
Yeah.
Right. It's a good point. Well, thank you so much, Amy. You were amazing today. I'm going to kick it back off to Betsy for her to wrap us up.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us, Amy. And it was really great. I really appreciate all the feedback and everything that you've shared. And I want everybody to join us the second Wednesday of December, which is December 9th, for another expert exchange. We'll ask real questions from real experts. So make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel that's on HAA TV and get those sessions automatically added to your library.
Perfect. Thank you, Betsy. Remember.
Thank you, Betsy.
Yes, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, HAA TV. We have tons of pressing pandemic-related topics already available for you to watch. And if you do have a suggestion for an upcoming topic, please email us at comm, that's COMM, at haaonline.org, and we will try to get it in the lineup. Until then, make it a great day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.